Good morning. Let me fix my camera a little bit. I am sorry for that late post. Hold on, guys. I'm a hot mess this morning. This is Monday morning action for sure, right? Sorry about that. I was traveling at the last minute and I just put the post up. I bet people are going to be popping on. I know a lot of people rely on me putting that post in the Facebook group to log on. And I got some camera stuff going on. How can my camera be so different from Friday night cocktail night? Well, it's good to see you this morning, Donna. You are already here. Good morning in Alberta, in sunny Alberta. You know, we are getting no sun today. I don't know what's going on. It was a scalding weekend, I think, in New England in general. Now super overcast and a bit gloomy again. Karen, good morning. Good to see you. Kaz, good morning from cool Wisconsin. These constant changes, isn't it crazy? I just don't remember life being like this. I remember spring being temperate and summer being scalding and autumn being cool again and winter being freezing cold. And it's so different from day to day, region to region, of course, but from day to day too. Tad, great to see you. I was just thinking about you this morning. Got to make it work, Tad. Got to make it work. I'm trying to figure out, this is everybody's struggle in life, the Zen struggle of the yin and the yang and the when and the how and the now and the whatever, and trying to put everything together and get a good balance going of I'm busy, not busy, time off, enjoy, hook, make, do, sell. It's everything is such a crazy balance right now, but I'm trying to get better at it. Joy, I owe you a message. I'm super excited about your rug too. Joy is doing like an oversized, like a floor-sized floor rug with one of the Abenaki patterns, one of the Helen Albee patterns. You remember that set of dies that I did from the back of her really neat old book, 1906, I think it was. That is so cool. I'm going to be a copycat and do the same thing, I think, because I thought that was a great idea. And I love those patterns too. Robin, great to see you in Wisconsin. Wow. Beverly, great to see you. Happy Monday, everybody. Linda, happy Monday. I missed you at the end of the Zoom. I think you were having problems with the Zoom that day, it seemed like, because you were on and off, and I missed seeing you. Linda, good morning. Chrissy, good morning. Good to see you. And Penny, Kirsten, thanks for the heads up, Kirsten. I was frantically trying to get the thing up. I'm going to put tomorrow's up as soon as I stop. I'm in such a time thing this morning because I was working on some great projects, trying to catch up after being away for so long, trying to get some things in terms of like making sales and stuff that I can show and offer and have that are new. And I started a new, I know Kira's not watching because she doesn't watch during the day because she's working, but she finished bingo last night. Kira finished our bingo game last night, and the theme is flowers. So I'm going to be opening up that document she sent me last night. She is so good. I'm sure she nailed it a third time in a row. She's been helping. She's been doing the bingo. So I'm going to go into her document later and come up with some commentary and other things, but she's put together all of the rugs and everything. She is so good. She is so good. Patricia, good morning. I had a nice weekend. I hope you all had a nice weekend. Really was a nice weekend. It was sunny both days. Yesterday was Father's Day. I just bit my tongue. Saturday was a really warm day. And I know I talk about strawberry festivals from time to time because it's one of those great sort of remembrances of childhood being, at the church strawberry festival. It was just this yearly thing. And I remember it as being in the basement of the church, and there just being like a table of ladies that had pre-made and pre-cut strawberry shortcake, with whipped cream and ice cream on a biscuit, and you pay for it and go. And this strawberry festival was in Monroe, Connecticut, and it was super beautiful. It was on the Village Green. It was not in a cellar. It was on the Village Green, and I've never been to that town before. It's like a typical old New England Village Green with churches all around the edge, churches in the Masonic Hall right around the edge. It could not have been more beautiful or quaint, quintessential New England. I was super, super charmed and in love, but it was so hot. That aside, it was so nice, and I did have strawberry shortcake. Dairy intolerance aside, I had strawberry shortcake with ice cream and whipped cream. The kids bought puppets, like puppets that are on a marionette kind of a platform, and marshmallow shooters, which are like PVC pipes covered with decorative duct tape that they can shoot marshmallows at targets outside. The dog also is going to really enjoy this because he loves marshmallows. But it was really, really fun to go to number one, to go to a festival after a year of nothing. And secondly, to go to a strawberry festival. It just brought back so many memories of childhood. It was so, so nice. And yesterday was nice too. We went to a big outdoor bookstore and I found a lot of books that are going to help me with coffee time. I found some nice old books, and at least one of them, I haven't had time to go through the whole stack. I bought tons, but I bought a bunch of memoirs. And I was just looking at the New England states for this moment because I was time limited with the kids and everything. But I found some nice old memoirs from like the 30s, 40s, 50s. And when I opened one of them, I opened to a page where they were talking about rug hooking. It was written by a man, and he was talking about his mother or his grandmother putting the material down on the floor and taking a piece of charcoal from the fire and drawing a pattern on it. So I'm going to look at that and read that book more closely, and then I'll share that with you on a future coffee time. But it just made me think there's another vein to tap into, these old memoirs that are published by nobody. You know, just there's no publisher. You just find them at church shops or historical societies or whatever. They've been home published and very, very scarce, rare, but they often are going to have great references to things like our hobbies, rug hooking. Strawberry season is here, Carol. It is so exciting. So I forgot what I was saying before that. Oh, I was busy, 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 busy last night and this morning. I've been working on a new collection. This doesn't tell you much information like this. These are my notes. Maybe it's better on the back, the colors, the way I have them. I'm putting out a new collection that I will show you tomorrow. These are still wet. I was doing it late last night and all morning from like 7 in the morning until now. I did 30 colors. And where I got the idea from was Kira again. She sent me this thing. Maybe you've seen it it's on Facebook. It's like a color chart, an old color chart that had kind of a Harry Potter fantasy kind of feel to it. The colors were like goose poop and things like that, like kind of funny, like old-timey colors. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't want to do a color that I call goose turd, but I'm going to do something like that. And I thought, whoa, it may be like Shakespeare. That's something I do know quite a bit about. Shakespeare, colors, plays, characters, and then Midsummer Night's Dream. So this set is going to be called Midsummer Night's Dream. It's going to be 30 colors, and they're all going to be related to Shakespeare, not necessarily to that particular play, but to Shakespeare, to Elizabethan times. A lot of them are references to early dyes and early things that you would take pigment from. So it's a really, really nice set. I think it's my best set yet, so I will show you that tomorrow. But that's what had me running here today, a little bit on the late side. I'm also going to put out a couple other things today. I'm going to do a video that Joss started on Friday. She's so cute. She drew an abstract. You know, she did so well with her pattern River Rocks on Ribbon Candy Hooking website that she did a bunch more abstracts. I showed some of them at cocktail time on Friday. And this was one of the ones that she did. It's hard to see, but I hooked it. We hooked it together. She hooked a good part of it too, actually, over the weekend. It's just very, very small. Short thing to hook, but it's just one of her abstracts. It doesn't mean anything. But you know all those crazy balloons the kids have been blowing up? I don't know. Let me see if I can bring you in focus better. But a lot of them I put in here. I hooked, there's a balloon right there, the purple one. I just, as they were popping, which is, as you can imagine, constant, these long, skinny animal balloons, there's a pink one and a yellow one, and there's a red one in there. But I felt like Sweeney Todd with the meat pies. Every time I heard a balloon pop, I thought, oh, fresh supplies. What color was that? So I've got some magenta and some purple, some blue, but I just hooked them in, and they really did hook well. And even on the back, you can see where the little ends are. You see this little end here of the balloon, but they hooked pretty well. It was a bit of a stretch, no pun intended, pulling them through. But I have to say, at the end of the day, the metallic ones were nice. But the ones that were not metallic, like this yellow one and the pink one, those are even nicer. They have a real flat, plasticky, almost vinyl, screen wants to change the color, almost vinyl feel to them. And so it worked. Just hooking here and there with balloons worked. It was fun. I was short on colors. I was sitting on the couch. I was lazy. And as the balloon pops, I just hooked a few in, and it worked great. So that was fun. So I'm going to put some of her abstracts up like I did at Halloween with her sets. I'm going to price them very inexpensively, and the colors are going to be like to be determined. The colors are going to be, she's going to choose the colors. So it'll say on the post once I get that up, if you like certain colors, like give me all cool colors like blues and grays, then we'll do that. but otherwise, she likes to just put the sets together, each one different. And they will include number 5 strips, number 8 strips of wool, and also a variety of yarn. And there will be plenty, more than enough to do the thing, but we'll probably be using bits and pieces from other kits that we are finished with, that we have leftover from, cutting that stuff up and putting them into these kits. So you can always let me know if you have a color preference, but those will be coming later today, worst case scenario tomorrow. I'm also going to be posting a class, a beginner's class, and it's going to be a really, really well-rounded beginner's class. It's going to be hooking and punching with yarn. And it's going to come with 2 patterns, one abstract, probably I'll choose one of Joss's new ones, one classic abstract geometric that I pull from like Proma Gown or historical inspiration, not a Proma Gown. And it's going to include one blank that we're going to do ourselves, like a composition we do ourselves. They're all going to be small, like the one I just showed you. It's going to come with probably, I would say, 20 colors of yarn, skeins that I've pre-wound. And one pattern is going to come on monk's cloth, one on linen, and one on rug warp. And it's going to come with the punch needle and the hook. So that's my plan for this. Let's try a hook, let's try a punch needle, let's try all 3 backings. And these are small pieces. The class is probably going to be 2.5 hours long with a break in the middle, so you can really know what it's like to hook versus punch, and really know what those 3 backings are, so that you don't have to buy even a half yard of a backing that you're not sure you're going to like or use. You know, these patterns, I'm going to give you a 4-inch border on everything because I always do. But there's going to be 3 patterns that come out of this that are about that size of Jossie's that I did this weekend. That took maybe 2 or 3 hours to hook, you know, not huge. But that's coming too, because I think we need a class that really talks about backing and really defines those 2 tools for beginners or anybody who wants to take it. So those things are coming. Now, I got so many emails over the weekend from people who really enjoyed cocktail night. Hey, Lisa. Oh, hey, Ted. He's in the other room. Who really enjoyed cocktail night. And I'm so glad because it was such a mellow episode and it kind of evolved on its own. If you haven't watched it yet, we looked at this very hard to find book by Helen Cather, Talent, about her Aunt Harriet rug. And it was one of these romantic, cozy episodes that I sometimes do when I can find stuff to work with. And it was really a great episode. I got so much good feedback on it. And I got such interesting feedback. I don't know if Christine is on right now, but Christine wrote and said, you know, one of the families that I mentioned in that episode, I think it was last name Fall, surname Fall, in Maine, they have family by that name there. And she said, I'm going to have to do some family tree research to find out if they're related to Helen, to, you know, her rug hooking, to her group of talented hookers, remember, like the play on words. And she also said that when she told her mother about the episode, this is Christine, when she told her mother about the episode on Friday night, cocktail night, her mother said, you know, she said that I had mentioned Charlotte Stratton, who had a shop in Greenfield, Mass, for quite some time. And Charlotte Stratton, we're going to talk about this book in a minute, was the person who had the foresight and the opportunity to buy the Edward Sands Frost patterns. And she stocked them, and she sold them, and she saved them. So what Christine's mom said when she told her that was, oh, because her mom is from Greenfield, Massachusetts. And her mother said, I wonder if Charlotte was the woman who would come in and talk to us when we were in school, like go into the classroom and talk about rug hooking. Number 1, amazing. Did anybody ever go into your school classroom and talk about rug hooking? Because nobody ever came into mine and talked about rug hooking. But I thought, how interesting is that, and how fantastic is it that when people watch videos like this, the reach becomes such that people will start saying, I know somebody by that name. I'm going to pick up the research there and see what I can find out. Or, you know, somebody like Christine's mom says, I bet you anything that was the woman who had the shop in our town who came to speak to us. And it would be great to sort of solidify that. And I'll pick up the torch with as many of these leads as I can, as soon as I can. And find these things out, because it's so interesting. Once we start talking, we make these great connections. These connections are not recorded. Proma Gown is recorded really well, but everybody else is not. And if we can nail down all of these other names, the timeline, that whole event I mentioned in Friday at what is now URI, University of Rhode Island, of Helen being there, Charlotte being there, a bunch of the big names of that day being there, It would be remarkable to put everything into a much neater history than we've had so far with rug hooking. Hey, Jill. Jill says, I sent a message to my friend by the last name of Stratton to see if he was related to Charlotte. You had talked about. He wasn't. But great minds think alike. It's worth doing that. The thing with the last name Fall, that's such an unusual name. Fall, how many falls can there be in Maine? Not waterfalls, but surname Falls. I thought so interesting. That could really turn into something, right? So interesting. So, I touched on Charlotte Stratton on Friday cocktail night. I need to really, really push to find out more about her. I think this is going to require a trip to the Historical Society in Greenfield, Mass, because there's not a lot about her out there. I talked about her on maybe the first or probably the second bingo night that we ever did. By the way, bingo night is going to be this Friday night. Those cards that Kira's working on, flower-themed bingo night, will be this Friday night. So I'll get those cards done today or tomorrow, and we'll be ready to put them up, and you can start buying your bingo cards for this Friday night. Oh, also, before I forget, very important, I was going through boxes of stuff this weekend, and Jay was too, and we have so many old patterns that we need to get rid of. They are like ruining my life, tripping me up. I cannot possibly hook the hundreds of vintage patterns that I have. And I know from this show that many of you are always looking for old patterns and rugs to do or to trace and transfer and onto newer backing and do. So on Wednesday of this week on this show, I'm going to do something akin to a live auction. I'm going to be holding up a ton of old patterns, mostly McGowan's, some worked on, most not, most brand new. And I'll be saying this one, $10, bigger ones like $20. I'll be holding them up, and I'll create a system between now and then where you're able to say, sold, I want it. And then I'll let you know, write to me at ribboncandyhooking, gmail.com, and I'll get them all out the next day. I'm just going to already have them in packages and say, who wants this one for 10? Who wants this one for 15? None of them are going to cost a ton, none of them. But I want them to get to the right hands. And I also want to say, that's going to be Wednesday. So I'll be advertising that, and I'll be talking about that again tomorrow. As close to an auction as we can do. I know some people have trouble logging on. Let me know if you're having trouble, because I can always get on with you between now and Wednesday and see if we can figure out how to get you live so that you can also have the opportunity to snap up some of these old patterns. Just an FYI, when I get an old pattern, like an old McGowan, that I want to hook, but I don't want to hook it on the burlap because I know it's been stored, folded, and creased, and that those creases are going to rip sooner rather than later. When I have that situation and I still want to use the pattern, what I do is I go to Goodwill and I get like a crappy poster frame with plexiglass, flippity floppity plasticky frame front in place of glass, and I pop the plexiglass out of the cheap frame and I put it over the pattern and trace it with a Sharpie. And now I have a pattern, and you do whatever transfer you do, whether you're tracing it onto red dot, you're tracing it onto fiber tape, but at least you have you've traced the burlap if you don't want to trace on the burlap and ruin the original pattern, particularly if it's a colored pattern, right? Sometimes I do that when I don't want to put my Sharpie on that old pattern because I want to save the pattern for posterity. I put a piece of plexiglass from an old poster frame on top of it and pull the image off that way. Just an idea. So anyway, that's on Wednesday, and I'll remind you again, there's going to be a lot of patterns, and it's going to go fast, right? Because we really need to get rid of these. And again, none of them are going to be expensive. They're all going to be a bargain. So let me know if you're worried about that because of messaging or whatever. You want to have a fair whack at it. I want you to have a fair whack at it, and I also want to get rid of these patterns. There's so many. So I took out the chart. Will that auction be on Zoom? No, I think I'm going to do this format, Patricia. I think I'm going to do this format because with Zoom, I think it's even more messy with all of those windows popping and unpopping like whack-a-weasel. As soon as someone speaks, it pops up. I'm not going to do an auction in terms of like you bid 5 and she bids 10. I'm going to do an auction like I'd like to get 15 for this. It's a medium-sized one. It's Pro McGowan. It's hard to find. I'd like to get 15 for it. And if someone says, I want it, then I'm going to say, at the beginning, and I'm going to put in the post, as soon as you are buying them, just shoot me an email, tell me the name of it, because I'll tell you the name of it. This one is called, I don't know, Postcard Squares. I want postcard squares, to you, and then you send just that sentence to ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com, and I'll write back to you as soon as coffee time's over and say, give me, I'm going to invoice you, at the invoice at the PayPal address that you've written me on. We'll figure it all out. There will be some fiddliness with like, oh, that's not my PayPal address. But as long as I know that you want it and someone says sold, we're not going to do an auction in terms of increasing. You just tell me if you like it or not. And if nobody likes it, we pass on it and we move on to the next. But we have so many to look at. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, we'll do it again in the future. Barbara, good morning. Because I have so much stuff that I really need. I need to get to other rug hookers. It needs to be saved. I don't expect to make a profit. I don't expect to make a killing. I just need it out of my storage space so that new things can take its place. And I am at peace with knowing that at this point, I'm not going to be able to hook the 10 million images that I would like to hook in this lifetime. So it makes way more sense to share them at this point. So back to cocktail night. This is the Charlotte Kimball Stratton book. Now, this is Charlotte, and this is the woman who we credit with saving the frost patterns. And if you are a beginner, we're going back to that whole history of Frost being a tin peddler. I'm not going to do the whole story, but Frost being a tin peddler who noticed on his route, on his normal course of travel, that everybody was hooking rugs. All the women were hooking rugs, but many of them struggled with creating an image that they were proud of and happy enough with to spend time hooking and spend their, use up their rags hooking. Utilitarian type rug that you would also want to be quite pretty. So he was the person who came up with the idea of making commercial patterns, and he did this with stencils. He created stencils, which he later figured out how to color to give women a shape that they could work with, so they weren't freehanding every pattern. Women who were not that sure of their creative artistic ability did not like having to come up with a pattern. They were not super proud of the products that they got. So having somebody do it for them was a big innovation at the time, and it was a huge hurdle in our rug hooking history timeline. And those stencils, those patterns by Frost could have easily been lost, because if you remember from our episodes about, for example, Blue Nose Garrett episodes, there was a lot of crossover in northern New England, with Canada. There was a lot of crossover in people sharing patterns, borrowing each other's patterns, being inspired by each other's patterns. There was a lot of bleed between patterns and pattern companies. So Frosts were getting easily confused with Garrett patterns and a lot of other small companies at the time. Charlotte had access to the Frost patterns, and when she was had the opportunity to buy them, she did buy them. And she did just what Ralph Burnham did in Gloucester, Massachusetts. That was to record them, to start transferring them onto backing and selling them. And this is what saved them from extinction and oblivion. And this was a huge part of her catalog of patterns. She did a lot of her own patterns. We'll look at some of those now, but a lot of her patterns are Frost patterns. This thrust, this push to save all of his images, recognizing and realizing their historical importance, was a huge part of her life and a huge part of her business. So it was one of sort of the mainstays of the foundation of her business was these Frost patterns. Hey, Diane. Oh, I'm glad you're there. Late is great, too. So she did a lot of her own designing. This book actually is signed by her. I didn't even realize that until I just opened to it. It's signed by her. She is such a big name once you get into the history of rug hooking. She is such a big name, and we know hardly anything about her because this is not a personal book. This is a how-to book, unlike the book that we looked at on Friday, which is all heart, all personal. This is a how-to book. In this book, if you've got your finger on if you're about to pull the trigger on an eBay or an Amazon purchase, I'm going to show you this book. Just know that this book is wonderful as a piece of rug hooking history. There are some very good images in it. There's not a lot of new information for us in it. It's very basic information. She did it out of kindness. She had the heart of a teacher. She wanted people to know how to rug hook, and it's a very basic book on rug hooking, but there is no personal information about her. It's very hard to glean anything regarding her as a person by reading this book. It is a how-to book. It's an early how-to book. So having said that, let's look at it and let's read what it says. It was published by Harper in 1955. Now, on the back, it says, Charlotte Kimball Stratton. You know what I need? My glasses. that are more like a 4 than a 2. Charlotte Kimball Stratton is a Vermonter by birth. After her marriage to William B. Stratton, she made her home in Montpelier, Vermont, the capital. Their daughter, Mrs. Charlotte Sundin, married name, and grandson Roger W. Jr. live in Rhode Island. You know, that's probably where that crossover with URI comes from, right? Where they, what was then, it was, I forget what school it was called then, the something of Rhode Island, but it later became URI, where they had this great meeting of the minds among rug hookers that Helen was sent to from the Canadian company Rittermere, that we'll come back to later in the week. This could be because of Charlotte's connection to Rhode Island. Interesting. For 20 years, Mrs. Stratton conducted her Yankee Peddler studio at Montpelier, teaching women from surrounding towns to hook rugs and instructing them in dyeing methods. For the last 5 years, her studio has been located in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and she and Mr. Stratton moved when he retired after 41 years of service with the National Life Insurance Company of Vermont. These are all great starting points for research, right? In Greenfield, Mrs. Stratton opened the first normal school for hooked rug teachers. You know, isn't it funny, the use of the word normal in the mid-century? You see it all the time. I mean, you still see buildings that say normal school outside. Now, I mean, it strikes you as odd, right? Because it's like, as opposed to what, like Young Frankenstein, Gene Wilder's Abbey Normal School or whatever. But it's just one of those expressions that has changed, shifted definition over the years. Normal just meaning for everybody, open to everybody. The first one in the country, the first normal school for hooked rug teachers in the country. Because remember, Helen ended up, she didn't need to be certified through Rittermere. They gave her all the patterns and she was able to start teaching freelance. But in the end, she was certified by Charlotte. She was not able, for whatever reason, to get certified by any of the Pearl McGowan teachers in that school. But she was certified by Charlotte. So, and I guess this was officially through the normal school. Mrs. Stratton's company, oh, sorry, wait a minute, I skipped some. Mrs. Stratton invented the first table model folding rug frame and other articles for hookers. Interesting, interesting. She owns the famous frost patterns, designs for hooked rugs, which have come down to us from almost a century ago. Mrs. Stratton's company prints and sells the frost designs as well as her own designs for use of today's rug hookers. Her mail order business of patterns, now they are no longer in business, of course. I'm going to follow up on that in a future episode. But mail order business of rug hooking patterns, frames, and other equipments is considerable and is managed by Mr. Stratton. Mrs. Stratton appears annually at G. Fox, that was the big department store in Hartford, Jordan Marsh in Boston, and J.L. Hudson, Detroit, and other large department stores. She has lectured. Now remember, J.L. Hudson is the department store that Helen was at when she got her big break, right? I said New York, but it is Detroit. That was an era from Friday night. You know how I am with my department stores. I'm crazy with my department stores. But Helen got to show her giant Aunt Harriet rug at Hudson's. And that's where she met the people from Rittermere. That's how she got that connection going. She's also lectured at museums and before many women's clubs, as well as making frequent radio and TV appearances. This is all interesting. There are so many ties here. And I actually wrote to a woman in Rhode Island this weekend about Molly Naitobi. It was another sort of connection that I found because I'm still working with her family very closely on working on a book. But that brought me back to Charlotte Stratton too, because it was a person from Rhode Island who has since moved from Rhode Island, but crossed paths with some of these people and teachers of these people. So all of this taking shape, and anything you find out, let's pool information and help each other, shape it all into a nice, clean timeline. Barbara says the Teachers College in Toronto was called the Normal School. Yeah, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things. It's a weird choice of words, but we, of course, are so much more sensitive to the meaning and the nuances of words than people were years ago. I'm not even going to get started with that because there are limits, even for me. So this book, I'm going to show you what it looks like on the inside in case you are tempted. There's not a lot of meat here for us, I have to say. Cover's beautiful. That's the thumbnail that I used for today's episode. I'm going to tell you how this book is broken down in case you are interested. Again, this is a great book if you are starting a collection of rug hooking books to have that you love for your shelf, that you take down from time to time and leaf through. This is great for that collection. There's not going to be a lot in here for inspiration, or there's not going to be a lot of new information. If you've been following Coffee Time for months or since the beginning, there's not a lot of new information. The chapters run like this. The chapter 1 is design. They're very short chapters. This is not a profusely illustrated book. Very short chapters, design, what is design, what is the meaning of the word design, that kind of thing, and this kind of thing, you're seeing in the design chapter. She's helping people who would like to make their own original designs, frost style, come up with symmetrical designs where you draw a quarter of it and then transfer it quarter by quarter onto your backing. So when she talks about design, she's certainly talking about traditional designs. And it's a very small chapter. Color. And that chapter will talk about the color wheel. And this book is not in color. There are a couple of plates that are, but most of it is not. She's got a bigger chapter on dyes and dyeing because that was a huge part of her business. And that is interesting. It's information that we have often touched on, and we know cute illustrations in this book, though. But she gives very specific measurements, very specific formulas. I just saw the word Barrington, Rhode Island. That's the town where I'm from. In order to give you the best possible formulas for your dyeing, I solicited the help of Mr. Jack Allen of Barrington, Rhode Island, a well-known technician in this field. That just jumped out at me. Now that crosses with Molly Toby, who was prolifically working at this time, who was also from Barrington, Rhode Island. And yours truly is from Barrington, Rhode Island. So that is really interesting. She talks also about Putnam dyes and Cushing dyes. We can look at this in a little more detail tomorrow. I'll pick it up again. So dyes, and then another chapter, equipment and care of hooked rugs, preparation of the pattern. So this is for you to make your own pattern on backing, assuming that you are not working with a commercial pattern. And then she talks about actually hooking, mental attitude and posture. We'll dip back into this tomorrow. Most of the book, we'll dip back into the earlier chapters tomorrow. I'm not going to show you how to make a rug hooking frame and how to build a rug hook because we've already seen all of that. But we will maybe look at some of the other aspects of this that are quite cute. Most of the book, and this is the point, most of the book is showing you a pattern that is lovely, and then it's showing you how to shade the pattern in great detail, in huge detail. So this much of the book is stuff that I just mentioned, that there's a little bit more meat in there that I want to talk about, and the rest of the book, which is the majority, is going to be these kinds of illustrations with profuse notes on shading and dye color. So it is going to be one of these books. It's very, very good information, but it's going to be, you find the flower in the book that's the most like the flower that you drew on your backing, and you want to shade it like this. And here are some ideas for some colors to shade it. But that's going to be, it's a very technical book, and that's what basically 2/3 of the book is. Once in a while she's going to show us, and she numbers a lot of them too, once in a while she's going to show us rugs of her own and her students on pages like this. Most of her designs are certainly florals, very few geometrics. I'm not seeing any pictorials in here, mostly florals, that's her style, and a lot of scrolls. So this is what this book is about. If you love to do realistic, I eat my words, here is a scenic stair runner that is a pictorial. I want to talk about stair runners too tomorrow. I didn't get a chance to talk about the burlap idea today. I'll do that tomorrow too. I have a collection of stair runners that I acquired from another hooker that I'd never heard of, and the search is on for more info there too. But I'm going to start tomorrow with fluffing out this conversation about Charlotte a little bit more with some of her original designs, ideas from the beginning of the book. But again, I just want to caution you that if you are going to get this book, that is what to expect with the book. It's very helpful if you are going to do your own designs. She gives you great shapes, a lot of Native American style drawings like those, early American colonial type shapes that you would stencil onto a wall or like a Hitchcock chair. But it is a how-to book. It is a how-to book. So let's pick up with this tomorrow and talk about some of the things in the book that are not really cut and dry, black and white, super basic things. I'm going to look more at some of her original ideas, but again, most of the book is how-to. We'll pick a little bit more at Charlotte Stratton tomorrow, and I will put pull the really good stuff out that's very unique to her. I'm going to do a little more research on her tonight, hoping I have the chance to do that. And we're going to talk tomorrow. I want to show you the stair runner patterns that I got that are brand new and a name I've never heard of in hooking before. Someone who passed away years ago who I want to start researching. And also the idea for the burlap sacks. Great big hat tip to the earliest days of hooking on burlap sacks. I've got some behind me. We just didn't get there this morning. So let's pick up all of this and carry on tomorrow. I'll remind you tomorrow, in the 1950s, Barbara, same U.S. teachers' colleges were called normal schools. Yeah, just language has changed. Can you imagine if you called a school a normal school today? I don't even know if that would fly, because people would say as opposed to what? Language is a funny thing, isn't it? It's a moving target. Tad, you know that because your book. Tad wrote this fantastic book where it's like what is it like? I don't want to say it's European. I almost said Irish, and I know it's not. Like a romance translated into poetry. Really hard language puzzle that he did beautifully. Huge project, I'm sure that was, but it's like super exciting. Language is exciting. If you love it, then all of these little conversations are interesting. If you don't, things just become confusing like normal schools. But let's pick up tomorrow with Charlotte Stratton. I don't feel like we're done with her yet. I wish I could find out more about her as a person, but I think we're getting the ball rolling collectively, a few of us, on researching her life in more detail. That's going to be a writing to historical societies things, and it might even be an in-person thing in some cases. Because I feel there's so many clues about her and her husband and the insurance company, and there's so little known about her. How can this be? So let's pick up on that tomorrow morning and a couple other things tomorrow morning, and I'll remind you tomorrow about Wednesday's live auction of mid-century rug hooking patterns on burlap. So all of that is to come. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and I will see you in the morning. And I will post the thing now so I'm not so late tomorrow. Sorry about that. Crazy times. Have a good day.